Well, look, Phil, as you said, if this persists, this tariff persisted with Mexico and Canada, it would mean billions of losses for the domestic car industry.
The chief executive officer of Ford just entered the District of Columbia, like a man entering a burning building. It is not for the purpose of making headlines or shaking hands. Rather, it is to subtly warn the government that the policies it has implemented could destroy one of the last great industries in the United States. There is no such thing as a hypothetical future. It is already taking place. Jim Farley and Donald Trump are at a standstill over a 25% tariff, a supply chain that is broken up, and a standoff. It is not about politics, but about survival. However, politicians are not the first to exhibit these signs. They begin in places that are not noticed by anyone. One of the machines in Kentucky is slowing down, a parking lot in Toledo that is completely silent, a car that is $4,000 more expensive than it ought to be. The vast majority of people won't be able to make the connection, but I have no doubt that you will. Once you have a better understanding of what this actually is, you will begin to notice it everywhere. This is not the news version that you are watching. No, I repeat no. You are witnessing the version that chief executive officers discuss behind closed doors, and the vast majority of people never do hear. In light of this, you are already placed in a different category. That is to say, continue with it. The headlines were not the beginning of it. The beginning was marked by reluctance, a delay on the part of the supplier, a shipment that has not been received, a sudden increase in the cost of parts that nobody considered in their budget. The managers of factories all over the United States, particularly those located in the Midwest, began whispering, "We are experiencing a change." Following that, the announcement was made. The tariff shock was triggered on March 26, 2025, when President Donald Trump invoked Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. This event is now commonly referred to as the tariff scandal. All imported automobiles and components from Mexico and Canada would be subject to a blanket tariff of 25%. A 10% tariff on Chinese imports, which includes electronic components, batteries, and electric vehicle components. What explains this? What about jobs in the United States and national security? What is the result? Within the supply web that is the most tightly wound in the world, a chain reaction has occurred. The automotive industry serves North America. Ford was not only affected by this, you hit it right in the middle. Nearly 60% of the components that are used in a Ford vehicle that is manufactured in the United States originate from either Mexico or Canada, as indicated by both internal estimates and data from the industry. Among these are transmissions manufactured in Mexico for the Ford Bronco and steel and aluminum sourced from Canada for the F-150, which is the most popular truck in the United States. When a single link in a chain is disrupted, the entire chain comes to a halt. This includes wiring harnesses, sensors, and brake systems that have crossed international borders 7 or more times before a vehicle is ever built. And as soon as it did, prices began to respond with a timid whisper. According to projections made by analysts at Goldman Sachs, the tariff on parts alone would add between $2,000 and $4,000 to the price of an average domestic automobile. According to the models that are used internally, Ford would either have to take on billions of dollars in losses or pass the cost on to, yes, the customers. It doesn't matter. The maths is broken. The price of a Ford Edge, which had previously been sold for $38,000, has suddenly surpassed $42,000. A Mustang Mach-E motor that is perilously close to reaching $60,000 in price. Also, beneath the prices, there is a panic. The first layoffs were not made directly at Ford, but rather at suppliers. They started out quietly. In locations such as Romulus, Michigan, El Paso, Texas, and Hermosillo, Mexico, there were no protests at all, and no headlines were published. No more than a gradual release of jobs. This is the beginning of the collapse, not with a commotion, but with a lack of sound. The expression "built in America" has a powerful impact. It inspires feelings of pride, power, and independence. When it comes to the truth, however, almost nobody ever speaks it out loud. One cannot find a car that is made entirely in the United States. Not even Tesla, not even Ford, not even Chevrolet. Each and every vehicle that is parked on the lot is a jigsaw puzzle of global cooperation, which is pieced together using hundreds of supply lines, trade agreements, and foreign labor forces. In the same way that telling someone to rebuild a skyscraper without using steel, concrete, or windows is equivalent to saying, "Just make it here." Trump is saying that. It seems patriotic, at least until you do the maths, of course. But then it becomes obvious. Let's get it done. There are over 30,000 individual components that make up the typical modern automobile. More than 40 countries are the origin of many of them. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, even automobiles that are assembled in the United States still contain between 40 and 60% of components found in other countries. It's not just the components, it's the precision as well. There are only 2 facilities in the world that are capable of making certain transmissions. It is located in Japan. Another one is located in Mexico. Germany and Taiwan are the only countries that produce certain types of sensors. Battery packs? China is the source of more than 60% of the world's electric vehicle batteries. To put it simply, the system was never about autonomy. Rather, it was about effectiveness. The margins are extremely narrow. In the event that one component is missing and one shipment is delayed, you will not receive a car, but rather a paperweight worth $40,000. Consequently, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis do not merely import parts. Rather, they are dependent on them. This is where the trap lies. Tariffs do not immediately result in the reconstruction of American factories. They simply increase the costs of doing business in the present without addressing the issues that will arise in the future. The business world refers to what President Trump referred to as leverage, as a loaded gun aimed at its own foot, because it is impossible to impose tariffs on your way to control when your ecosystem was constructed on the principles of trust, speed, and collaboration. In addition, once you break that, once your suppliers begin looking elsewhere, and once foreign competitors begin filling the void, you will never get it back. In the span of months, years, and even in some cases, never. When something is wrong, you will feel it in your next car payment, in a dealership lot that is suddenly half empty, or in the look your neighbor gives you after you have been laid off from the plant down the road. You do not need a press release to tell you that something is wrong. Things are already taking place. Ford has issued a warning that if tariffs continue, the company will suffer losses in the billions of dollars. Last week, Stellantis laid off 900 employees in the United States after putting its plants in Canada and Mexico on hold. There will be no further exports from the United States from Jaguar, Land Rover, or Audi. However, this is only the first domino in the chain. It is estimated by analysts at CNBC that the sector could suffer losses of more than $100 billion in the coming year alone. Automobile prices are rapidly increasing. The price of a Ford Explorer that was originally $44,000 has now surpassed $48,000. In addition, although that is, excruciating, it is not the most terrible part. The towns that are not trending on Twitter are the ones that are experiencing the most damage. At the moment, the electric vehicle battery plant that Ford recently opened in Ohio is only halfway stocked. In the state of Kentucky, where foreign automakers are putting pressure on local suppliers to leave the state, there are no tariffs to avoid. In the state of Michigan, where employees are being coerced into working shorter shifts because inventory is falling. Although the media refers to it as market adjustments, the families who are experiencing it consider it to be nothing more than Monday. The terrifying part is about to begin. Even though the United States is hesitating, China is not slowing down. BYD, a Chinese electric vehicle (EV) giant, outsold Tesla on a global scale in 2017. And what do you think? Even though these tariffs have not yet been implemented, their supply chains, materials, and batteries are operating at full capacity. We run the risk of not only experiencing economic hardship, but also of being at a permanent disadvantage during the subsequent industrial revolution. It is not because we are incapable. Rather, it is because we are so preoccupied with trying to punch ourselves in the face and calling it strategy. If you are beginning to feel that this is more significant than the headlines have made it appear to be, then you are correct. It is. Until it is already over, the majority of people won't be able to put this together. However, if you are still present, you are not the majority of people, which is a relief. Proceed with your journey. Everything is going to fall into place after the next part. Have faith. It takes time for economies to completely unravel. They deteriorate in a whisper, one piece at a time, up until the day that the power is just, being held by someone else. That is the risk that we are currently considering. Because tariffs, despite the fact that they may appear to be a political tool for the short term, have consequences that unfold like a chess match over the long term. And the United States of America is currently falling a few steps behind. Take this into consideration. In the year 2024, the United States of America continued to maintain a competitive advantage in the field of electric vehicle innovation. Tesla's competitors were catching up to the company in terms of battery technology, charging infrastructure, consumer trust, Ford, General Motors, and even startups like Rivian, while China's BYD was gaining ground overseas. The electric vehicle, EV projects that Ford has in Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, and Tennessee that cost multiple billions of dollars are currently in limbo. How come? The reason for this is that they were constructed with the assumption that international trade would remain stable and that essential materials such as nickel, lithium, and semiconductors would continue to flow from allies such as Canada and logistical hubs such as Mexico. Not only did the new tariffs cause an increase in costs, but they also destroyed the basis upon which these investments were constructed. The United States of America does not merely slow down, it yields the field if those plants come to a halt, if consumer demand decreases as a result of price increases, and if subsidies disappear due to policy chaos. This is where things start to get more gloomy. Other countries are keeping a close eye on it. Germany is making a concerted effort to achieve supply chain independence for electric vehicles. South Korea has just finalized a deal to purchase lithium from Argentina. Over 75% of the world's battery material processing is under China's control. They are no longer responding to our tariffs. Rather, they are taking advantage of them. Meanwhile, foreign automakers such as Hyundai, Toyota, and BMW continue to enjoy the absence of tariffs from their respective governments and are quietly gaining market share in the United States, while Detroit continues to suffer losses. The administration of Donald Trump asserts that this is an essential reset, a shock to the system that will bring manufacturing back home. When industries break apart, however, it is not always the case that they come back together again. Talk to the towns that are known for their textiles, steel mills, and camera factories. Instead of saying goodbye, power simply moves on to other things. And by the time you realize it's vanishing, it's usually too late. People have the misconception that significant events are the ones that make history. When no one is paying attention, however, the majority of it takes place in complete silence. Having a tariff of 25% is not a war. It's not a recession at all. There is no siren included in the package. When this happens, the price of one component goes up slightly, followed by another, and finally, a shift is eliminated. Plants begin to slow down. Within the confines of a boardroom, a decision is made to relocate production to either Brazil or Vietnam. When anyone finally becomes aware of the damage, it is no longer considered breaking news. Basically, this is the new standard. Ford is aware of this. Because of this, Farley went into Washington without a camera crew accompanying him. This was not a political statement that he was making. He was attempting to stop a slow bleeding that no one could see, but he was successful. Because the real risk is not limited to the loss of jobs or the increase in the cost of automobiles. We run the risk of forgetting how fragile the system is, which is the real risk. That we refrain from looking for answers, which we allow slogans to take the place of strategy. The flags are not the foundation of this industry. The foundations of it are trust, flow, timing, and access. In the event that this is broken, what appears to be patriotism can quietly transform into unconsciousness. Give this some thought. The last time you heard about a factory opening in your town was when it was just recently installed. Count the number of times you've heard people closing their doors. There is no political point of discussion here. An economy that is unable to accurately read its own pulse is the cause of this drift. At this moment, it appears as though the system is maintaining its integrity. However, if you look closely, you can see that the bolts are becoming less tight. There is a stretching of the seams. Increasingly, there is no sound. Automobile manufacturers are making adjustments to their marketing strategies. Ford began a campaign called America for America, in which it offered employee-level pricing. The purpose of this campaign was not to celebrate independence, but rather to cushion the blow. In a similar manner, Stellantis is acting. We are buying time for Hyundai. BMW is keeping a close eye on the situation, confident that their manufacturing facilities are not in danger. While the government of the United States is coercing its own citizens into a chokehold, Foreign companies are quietly and gradually positioning themselves to consume a portion of the market share held by the United States. It is not just a matter of economics. As leverage, it is. Once something is lost, it is extremely difficult to retrieve it. America gave up its dominance in the textile industry, as well as in the manufacturing of semiconductors and camera technology. Each and every one of these instances began with a delay, an expense, or a shortcut. After that, the knowledge disappeared. And finally, the machines. The jobs come next. It is not with a resounding victory that a superpower is defeated. Rather, it is through 1,000 quiet exits. In addition, perhaps in the future when someone asks, "Do you remember when automobiles were more affordable? Or was that plant not open to the public in the past?" Due to the fact that you were paying attention when it was extremely important, you will remember watching this. The vast majority of people won't. It is likely that they will continue to scroll, continue driving, and continue to believe that someone else is in charge. On the other hand, the cost is always borne by someone. Also, in the end, it will affect everyone. A documentary was not what this was. This was not a theory built on a conspiracy. The blueprint was presented here. They wish that you would never get in touch with them. Indeed, you are a different person now that you have witnessed it. Instead of scrolling past headlines, you are now reading them. When you buy something with the Made in America label, you should inquire about the materials used to make it. When you see a car that costs $50,000, you won't see that and think to yourself, "That's just inflation." No, you now have an understanding of the origin of it. It is now too late for most people to see what you have seen now, but you have seen it now. There is no entertainment in that. That is a competitive advantage. In addition, if you believe that this comes to an end with the automotive industry, you have not been paying attention. The reason for this is that the same pressure is already building up in the areas of housing, energy, food, and healthcare. Behind closed doors, there is silent movement, and each and every one of them will experience a normal sensation, up until the day that they do not. Let's get down to business. That leaves you with two options. You are free to click off, forget about this, and return to the feed at any time. It's just another intelligent person acting like a fool. Alternatively, you can continue to correspond with Morrow. Be a part of the group of people who always know before it breaks. There is no fanfare, not a face. There is no filler. Nothing but the truth that they wish to remain hidden. To subscribe, click here. If you don't mind, that is. On the other hand, if the next domino falls and you were caught off guard, you will remember this moment and the things that you chose to ignore.